digital webinar, the second in a three-part series where Samagra Governance Consulting project leads deep dive into the state engagements and projects that they manage. My name is Helen Crichton, and I'm the manager of the Saksham Haryana cell. Today we'll be deep diving into the Saksham Haryana programme, a statewide education transformation programme running in Haryana since 2017. In the first section of this webinar today, I'll start with an overview of the programme. I'll talk about the problem statement we've had, the interventions that we've undertaken, and the impact that we've had to date. In the second half of this webinar, I'll deep dive into the detail of a couple of those interventions to really get into the work streams that we're taking up and talk about the variety of the work that comes with the programme and what it means in practice to be in the Saksham Haryana cell. So, to start with talking about Saksham Haryana, let's start with some context and some background. Within Haryana, there are 15,000 schools, 1 lakh teachers, and 20 lakh students. In 2017, less than 55% of elementary students were grade level competent, meaning that less than half of students were able to kind of perform academically as expected for their age range. With this in mind, the CM kicked off the Saksham Haryana programme in July 2017, with the goal of making more than 80% of government elementary students grade level competent. In order to meet this goal, a rigorous framework was designed and has been implemented. This framework has 4 key parts: administrative initiatives, academic initiatives, key enablers for facilitating these initiatives, and finally Saksham Ghoshna, which drives momentum for the whole programme. I'll start off by talking about each of these sections of the framework as an overview, and then I'll deep dive on some of the specific initiatives and work streams that we've undertaken. In terms of initiatives on the administrative side, the first 2 are really around teacher availability, and the third is around access to online systems, online HR systems, and the 4th is around learning platforms. In terms of teacher availability and teacher transfers and recruitment, 7,000 JBTs have been recruited. An online teacher transfer system has been set up so that teachers can be transferred as needed to ensure equitable distribution across schools. And 18 HR processes have been shifted online so that teachers no longer need to spend time outside of the classroom processing paper forms. They can do it quickly and easily online. To facilitate these online HR processes, online service books have also been launched to reduce the need for paper for teachers' HR processes, and also to ensure a safe and secure central repository of teacher data for better management of teachers. Alongside these, timely textbook delivery has also been ensured to make sure that all students have the learning materials they need from the start of the academic year, and they're not waiting for textbooks to be delivered for weeks or even months before their learning can start. Alongside these administrative initiatives, a whole series of academic initiatives have been undertaken. These academic initiatives are focused on moving the system away from rote learning and towards competency-based teaching, which means changing that interaction in the classroom between the teacher and the student to make sure the teacher is not just teaching from the textbook, it's not just trying to complete the syllabus, but it's actively ensuring that students can understand and apply the competencies and knowledge that they're gaining. To make this shift away from rote-based learning towards competency-based learning, academics are being institutionalized as the Saksham Chakra, where there are 4 key phases. The first being awareness of competencies, feeding into teacher enablement for competency-based teaching. These are then supported by competency-based assessments. And finally, insights from these assessments can be taken back into the system and replayed into teacher enablement to further improve education. To break this down a little bit further by what we mean by each stage of the chapter, we'll look at each in turn. So in terms of awareness of competencies, we have something called the Saksham Talika. The Saksham Talika basically maps competencies both to textbooks and to the SAT cycle, or the stage in the academic year when that competency is to be taught. Alongside mapping at-grade competencies, the Saksham Talika also maps the previous grade, or the remedial grades, competencies, so that teachers have a clear map of what competencies should be taught when, and what materials they can use to be teaching those competencies. So Saksham Talika really helps teachers be aware of the competencies that they're teaching and how they can teach them. Moving into the further enablement for teacher-based competency, for teacher competency-based teaching, there are 3 parts within this. First is around remedial, second is around mentoring, and the third is around teacher resources. For remedial education, teachers have been moved towards grouping students basis their learning levels, so that children who are further behind or further behind than the rest of their class can be taught extra remediation of competencies, while other students can be taught more advanced topics. To support this remedial teaching, the Learning Enhancement Programme was launched, which provided teachers with dedicated manuals for remedial teaching. So for the competencies which aren't in the textbook for that grade, for that year, the Learning Enhancement Manual provides activity-based learning activities and lesson plans for the teacher to effectively do remedial teaching. Alongside these materials, there's also been a big push for teacher training, and this was initially conducted through WhatsApp. So through a program called DigiLEP, Digital Learning Enhancement Program, 160 teacher WhatsApp groups were set up with over 35,000 teachers connected. Through these WhatsApp groups, competency-linked videos and materials were shared to further enhance teachers' competency-based teaching. Alongside these materials being shared, teachers are also being supported through mentors. In Haryana, there are over 1,400 mentors who go into schools every day and visit teachers to observe their classroom teaching and provide tips, advice, and corrections for their competency-based teaching to improve that classroom interaction. These mentors visit at least once every month to each school, spending over 2.5 hours in the classroom with the teacher discussing how to implement competency-based teaching. Alongside, coming after teacher enablement, we have competency-based assessments. Now, there's a range of competency-based assessments that could be used. Saksham Ghosh, I'll come to in a bit. I'll talk about the state student assessment test. The student assessment test happens every 2 months in schools in Haryana, so it happens every 6 times in each academic year. The questions designed by the State Centre for Educational Research and Training, SCRT, the questions are created by them and they're linked to the competencies. So they're linked to the Saksham Talika, the SAT cycle, and they're competency-linked questions. Alongside competency-based assessments, we then have data collected from these assessments so that insights can be drawn. The SAT dashboard, which is released within 15 days of the SAT exam happening, shows SAT performance at a state level, a district level, a block level, and a school level, and even a class level, so that detailed insights from students' performance on tests and exams can be used and fed back into the teaching and learning process. So students, teachers, administrators, officials are able to see what are the weak competencies, which are the bottom 5 competencies, what are the weak subjects, what are the weak classes, where are the weak blocks, and where the teachers need more support. So this is the Saksham diagram. That's an overview of the Saksham diagram of how academic interventions are being implemented. Underpinning these administrative and academic initiatives have been a whole series of enablers which have been critical to providing impact in the work. The first of these enablers is direct Chief Minister involvement, the Chief Minister taking regular reviews, holding public meetings and gatherings at awards ceremonies, as well as promoting the programme through tweets and other media outlets. Direct CM involvement sets the tone for a whole tiered structure of reviews, which go all the way from the CM at the top, down through districts, through states, through state reviews, through district reviews, and through block level reviews. The CM's presence at the top of this review chain sets a cadence for serious reviews at every single level. Supporting this system of reviews is some information systems, with a whole series of WhatsApp groups which cascade through districts and blocks right till the teacher level, data being collected through various technology systems like the SAP dashboard and the Saksham Samiksha dashboard, and through the efforts of the Chief Ministered Good Governance Associate Programme, where there is an associate within every district in Haryana, providing detailed inputs and guidance to the programme at the district level. These information systems allow for very targeted, very accurate appreciation of officials and teachers, as well as pull-ups in all of these reviews and meetings, making sure there's full visibility all the way to the CM's office, high quality, action-orientated reviews. Alongside this review structure has been a whole series of initiatives aimed at generating momentum on ground and generating enthusiasm among officials, teachers, mentors and monitors to take the programme forward. One example of this is the Saksham Officer of the Week programme, where every week a suitable candidate is nominated and awarded at the state level and felicitated with the state level certificate and recognition through various channels, including WhatsApp. Alongside these enablers sits Saksham Ghoshna, which really underpins and provides the momentum for the whole Saksham Haryana programme. Saksham Ghoshna is an independent third-party assessment of students' learning levels, conducted at the block level on a sample basis. When a block believes that it has done enough to become grade level competent, to have enough of its to have 80% of its students grade level competent, that block can nominate itself for the Saksham Ghoshna exam to be assessed by an independent third party who selects a representative sample of students from that block to sit the exam. If 80% of those students meet the cutoff for being grade level competent, that block is publicly declared as Saksham and felicitated accordingly. This whole concept of Saksham Ghoshna has gamified the system and really created a healthy competition between blocks and created momentum at all levels within the system for the Saksham Haryana initiatives. At the state level, at the district level, at the individual school and teacher level, all have been galvanised by this Saksham Ghoshna exam. Alongside galvanising the initiatives we've already talked about, the academic and the administrative initiatives at district and state level, Saksham Ghoshna has also galvanised a whole series of district and block level innovations and interventions and activities. These include block level micro-planning for the Saksham Ghoshna exam, whereby blocks put together very detailed plans how they want to prepare their students for the exam and implement them accordingly. It's also generated innovations by teachers, such as the Saksham Register, where a teacher keeps a very detailed check of which students have achieved which competency, when and how. It's also introduced things like pre-assessments within schools where students practice competency-based assessments, and cluster-level best practice sharing, whereby teachers and officials come together either at the cluster level or at the block level to discuss their experiences of preparing for the Ghoshna exam and how others can learn from them to do better themselves. So Saksham Ghoshna has catalysed a whole series of innovations and interventions at block level and given a huge amount of momentum and on-ground action for the programme. In terms of results, in Saksham Ghoshna Wave 1 from 2017 to 2019, 2 subjects were assessed, Hindi and Math. And there were 8 rounds of assessment. There were 8 Saksham Ghoshna exams. All 119 blocks in Haryana appeared at least once for the assessment, with some appearing several times in the attempt to get that coveted Saksham status. So in total, there were 233 Saksham Ghoshna assessments of blocks. Within these, 107 out of the 119 blocks in Haryana were declared as Saksham, meaning that overall, 86% of students in Haryana in elementary grades were declared as grade level competent in Hindi and maths. Following this success, Saksham Ghoshna Wave 2.0 was launched in 2019 to expand the scope and reach of Saksham Ghoshna. Initially, Ghoshna was nomination based. It's now been expanded so that all 119 blocks sit in every single round. The number of subjects being tested has been expanded from just Indian math to include science, EVS, and social studies also. The number of grades being tested has been increased. Previously, grades 3, 5, and 7 were assessed to give a representative sample of elementary education, but this has now been expanded so that all grades 3 to 8 sit for the exam. This means that the number of grade subject combinations for any blocks appearing has increased from 6 to 21, meaning that to be declared as Saksham, a block now has a huge number of grade subject combinations required. In Saksham Ghoshna Wave 2, results have therefore been declared grade-wise, with a block being declared Saksham in any given grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. There have so far been 2 rounds, 2 assessments under Saksham Ghoshna 2.0, one in September 2019 and one in February 2020. And we have seen a huge improvement in the number of blocks being declared Saksham in any given grade between these 2 rounds. So in the most recent February 2020 round, we saw that 117 of the 119 blocks were declared Saksham, with similarly high levels of blocks becoming Saksham in grade 4, showing that foundational and elementary learning is very, very strong in these grades, across all subjects, not just Indian maths, Hindi, maths, and EVS also. Looking towards senior grades, similarly, there has been a large improvement in performance between September and February, with 93 blocks in grade 5 being declared Saksham in all subjects. Similarly, in 6, 7, and 8, over 40 and indeed over 60 blocks being declared Saksham in Hindi, maths, science, and social studies in these grades. This shows a significant increase in performance throughout this just one academic year for Saksham graduates. Now that we've understood the overall Saksham Haryana framework and looked at some of the achievements that that framework has brought, we can look at some of the detailed work streams that sit within this. In particular, in this part of the presentation, I'll deep dive on some of the academic work pieces and how exactly we've institutionalized this Saksham chakra. Looking at the Saksham chakra, it starts off with awareness of competencies as the fundamental part of moving teachers away from rote-based learning and assessment towards competency-based learning and assessment. To take this work stream forward, I'll talk through first about why a competency framework is so important and how it's used. It's used for textbooks, it's used for designing remedial content for tracking student learning, and for curating questions, other resources, and of course assessments. Within Haryana, there were originally at least four different types of competency frameworks in use. The National Learning Outcome Framework from NCRT, the SCRT, a state-level month-wise distribution and month-wise framework, various frameworks used by external organisations who are working closely with the state, for example, SAMPark, or external testing agencies. And finally, there was also a remedial framework used by SCRT and used for the LEP programme, which we discussed earlier. So the problem was in Haryana that you have all of these different competency frameworks, and it's very difficult for a teacher to start applying them. The definition of any given competency is mixed across all of these frameworks. It's a bit confusing to have multiple different sources. This leads to inconsistencies in assessments also, with different assessments using different frameworks. And it makes it very hard for a teacher to see how competencies ladder or connect across grades. So what needs to be taught this year, what needs to be taught next year, and how do they link? And if a child is falling behind this year, what parts of last year's or previous year's content needs to be remediated and caught up on? So a key part of this work stream within Saksham Haryana has been around building one robust competency framework in elementary grades. To start with, we thought about what was the most important features of any competency framework. First of all, they need to be specific, very actionable and measurable competencies so that teachers can clearly understand what their goal is. They also need to be manageable and succinct. So we settled on a small number of competencies per subject grade. So a teacher could be very clear on what were the key concepts and ideas that a child needs to be able to master within that year. Thirdly, they need to be laddered across grades so that remediation is simple and students' learning levels can be improved and remediated if they're falling behind. And finally, these competencies can't sit in isolation. They need to be clearly mapped to the syllabus and all teaching and learning materials, including the textbook, any worksheets, any exams, that kind of thing. Once you have a framework with these features, then it's easier for teachers to focus on mastery of syllabus and mastery of concepts rather than rote learning. It's much easier to do high quality assessments. It's much easier to track students' learning levels. And it's much easier to do remedial teaching and to catch students up if they're falling behind from previous grades. So this work stream was set out with these very specific goals to design a new competency framework. This work stream was taken forward together with SCRT, the state pedagogy body, as well as external academic experts to collaborate together on building this new competency framework. To do this, there were over 15 days of in-person workshops, reviewing, revising, looking at these competencies for every grade subject from 1 to 8, classes 1 to 8. Alongside these workshops, a whole process of offline iterations and review was taken over a period of a month or so, where SCRT and academic experts continue to collaborate and continue to iterate and refine these competency frameworks. At the end, new competency frameworks have been made for grades 1 to 8 for English, Maths, and Hindi. Taking this one framework for English grade 5 to see exactly how they've come out, they take NCRT learning outcomes as a base, but they are coded for ease of reference, and they are limited to 14 or 16 very clear, concise and succinct competencies for each grade subject. In grades 1 to 5, there's 14 competencies per grade subject, and in grades 6 to 8, there's 16, making it very simple for a teacher to know exactly what they have to teach each year. And as I said, they're very succinct and measurable, easy to understand. They've also been laddered across grades, so that for any given competency code, you can look and you can see what are the prerequisite competencies a child needs to understand and learn in order to learn that competency. And so when a student is struggling with that given competency, a teacher can easily go back and teach previous year's concepts and topics. Now that this new competency framework is in place, this competency framework is being used as the basis to create new teacher learning materials to further facilitate competency-based learning. There are 4 parts to this. One is the Saksham Talika, which takes this competency framework and clearly maps it to textbooks and clearly maps it and organises it by stat cycle. This Talika also includes the prerequisite competencies and displays those clearly laddered for any given competency. Alongside the Saksham Talika, there's the Saksham Mulankhan Sochi, which is a document to record student-wise competency attainment. And supporting remedial education, there are LEP remedial manuals, providing teachers resources to teach previous year's competencies through activity-based learning. Underpinning all of this is a series of student worksheets, which includes practice questions based on competencies for students using both at-grade competencies and previous year's competencies. So that was a deep dive into the first part of the Saksham chakra, awareness of competencies. Moving on to the second part of the Saksham chakra, within Teacher Enable for competency-based teaching, we have a very different kind of work stream, around mentoring. While awareness of competencies was a work stream focused heavily on conceptual problem solving, working with a small group of stakeholders to problem solve and revise a competency framework and develop new teaching and learning materials, the mentoring work stream is really a much more technologically focused and operationally focused workstream, often initiated in campaign mode. So to take a look at another kind of workstream under Saksham Haryana, let's look at this one, mentoring, in more detail. Mentors in Haryana come from a variety of cadres, including diet lecturers, assistant block resource coordinators, and block resource persons. Mentors operate at the district, block, and cluster level. Mentors operate predominantly at the block and cluster level, and they go into schools to provide teachers with detailed pedagogical inputs on their teaching. They will sit in the classroom for a couple of hours and provide teachers with inputs on their competency-based teaching and how they could improve the information that they're imparting to students. A clear visit timetable has been set for mentoring and for monitoring, and a school can expect to receive a visit from a mentor roughly once every month. Now, a key problem statement for mentoring is both how to record the information that mentors collect and the data that they collect about students and teachers when they visit the school, and also how to make sure that mentors are keeping up to date and on track with this schedule of visits. To solve these problems, the team have developed the Saksham Samiksha app using open source software. This open source app provides a series of simply configured forms where the state can collect data from every school visit. Every time a mentor visits a school, they are given a form to fill, asking the key questions about their visit, and also which geotags and which captures their geolocation, so that we can be sure that the mentor actually visited the school that they said they visited at the time when they said they visited. This app has been specially configured to work in offline mode, so that when mentors are visiting schools in remote locations, it still works. And all the forms are bilingual, giving the user the option to choose whether they want to fill in Hindi or in English. All the data from the Saksham Samiksha app is visible on the Saksham Samiksha dashboard, an online dashboard showing not only the compliance rates of different mentors and whether they have completed their visits that they were supposed to each month, but also details of the information that they captured about different schools when they visited them, allowing district and block officials a unique insight into what's happening in classrooms, as well as the compliance rates of mentors. In order to further boost mentoring compliance and to make sure that mentors are visiting all the schools required, alongside the dashboard is used in district and block level reviews, whereby district officials and block officials can pull up mentors who are falling behind. Similarly, alongside these reviews, a dedicated WhatsApp campaign has been run, where all the mentors are together on a WhatsApp group, and regular infographics and data summaries are shared, detailing the schedule of visits, which they must maintain, actions they should be taking when they're conducting these visits, and flagging where visits are being made and where visits are falling behind, basis data collected through the app. Thanks to this detailed review mechanism and WhatsApp campaign, mentoring visits in elementary schools are currently exceeding their specified number. In February 2020, the last month for which full data is available, elementary schools saw mentors completing 152% of the visits that they were expected to produce. This has been a huge boost for teachers, with a survey of 2,500 teachers reporting that the vast majority, the overwhelming majority, find that mentors provided valuable guidance and support in their journey towards competency-based teaching. So that concludes our deep dive on mentoring and concludes the 2 workstream deep dives that we've done. Overall today, to sum up, we've looked at the Saksham Haryana framework and seen how it combines a range of administrative interventions, academic interventions, and key enablers to really drive impact on the ground and drive towards our goal of making more than 80% of students in Haryana grade level competent. Using this framework, we're confident the programme will continue to grow and be successful. Thank Thank you for joining this masterclass.